All right. Shazam! What the fuck? Everything's exactly the fucking same. So Shazam tells the story of a foster child who is given all of the powers of a forgotten wizard, and he becomes a superhero whenever he shouts the name Shazam. What's up, guys? Well, I got to go see Shazam 2 weeks early. Anybody that caught that Fandango was doing this little early screening, you got to see it too, so I'm not alone. But I'm so glad I got to check this thing out early, because for a movie that for the longest time I just kind of turned my nose up and scoffed at, just the idea in general, I'm like, why are we focusing on a Shazam movie? Let's get Batman going. And after I saw the initial trailer, the Comic-Con trailer for this movie, I could not wait for it. It looked like an absolute blast. It looked like the tonal change to kind of break up the monotony in the superhero, comic book movie universe that we needed. And I'm here to tell you that pretty much all of my expectations were met or exceeded with Shazam. DC has another hit on their hands. I think it debuted at like 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. That might be the highest they've ever debuted. So big, huge round of applause for Warner Brothers and DC for getting their head out of their ass and giving us another great movie. So now we've got Aquaman, we've got Shazam. They are on a streak, but let's talk about Shazam. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, before I put the cart above the horse, let's talk about this movie, Shazam! Starting right off with the positives, I gotta go with the characters and the actors that portrayed those characters. Like, you have Billy Batson portrayed by Angel something. What the fuck is his name? Pause, please. You have Asher Angel. I knew Angel was in there somewhere. Asher Angel portrays Billy Batson. And Billy Batson is a really unique character for a superhero film, and especially within the DC universe, because think about like the origins for all the other heroes. You got Batman, this orphaned guy who's a billionaire who wants to, punish the criminals and everything like that. You have Superman, who is an alien trying to fit in on Earth. You got Aquaman, who's part Atlantean and trying to fit in which kingdom, and Wonder Woman's this relic of the past. There's all these huge epic storylines. Billy Batson, he's a guy who was abandoned by his mother. That's it. He's a regular kid who is searching for his parents, mostly his mother, because that hole in his heart, that hole in his life is, where did she go? Why didn't she come find me? Did she come find me but couldn't find me? I need to find her to get this hole filled in. That is the character arc that we are on the journey with Billy Batson for. And then in the middle of all that, he's given this Superman level of power with this wizard giving him these powers, and he just has to say Shazam and he becomes Zachary Levi. And then you get Zachary Levi, and his version of Billy Batson, or Shazam, however you want to refer to him, is great as well. The movie has been compared to Big a lot, and that's totally founded, and they know it too, because there's a couple of little really nice winks and nods to the movie Big. But that's one of the things that I like about it. It's a superhero movie, but it's lighthearted, and it has that big kind of aspect to it where you have a kid who's now given an adult body, an adult life, and adult situations to deal with, and we get to see how that plays out. As well as just seeing how it plays out with a young adolescent kid, 13, 14 years old, how he responds to the superhero-filled world around him. I feel like this movie actually tackles that and does it better than, say, Spider-Man Homecoming, that was kind of going for the same thing. What does a kid that has powers suddenly do? Kids do stupid shit. Would he do stupid shit? He does stupid shit in Shazam. He's taking selfies, he's doing YouTube videos, he's on the street, busking for money and everything like that while he shoots lightning out of his hands. It's a bunch of dumb, hilarious scenarios that's just a blast to see play out, because mostly Zachary Levi's portrayal of Billy as well as Shazam is just so refreshing and on point for what you would want that character to be. Just like Tom Hanks was great in that role of playing an adult with a child's mind, it's the same thing here. Zachary Levi is hilarious. I was nervous about his casting because I didn't know the tone they were going for with this movie, but he's perfect. Absolutely perfect. He fits the role. Physically, he looks, fit for somebody that could go toe-to-toe with Superman. How much of that is padding, how much of that is actual, muscle, who knows, but it works. And Zachary Levi, as well as Mr. Angel, because I've already forgotten his name, Billy Batson and Shazam, they are the highlight of this movie, and for an origin story, they should be. And there's a lot of side characters in this, like the kids in the foster house, the foster parents, they're all great as well. There's not a single bad character or bad portrayal in this entire movie, but obviously I don't have time to go into all of them. I'll just say overall the side characters are great, but two more that I want to get into is the kid from It who played Eddie, the one who was always kind of like a little bit more hypochondriac, the one that always, his mom was really overbearing. He's in this playing like kind of the main foster brother of Billy Batson. And I think his name was Freddie. He's great in this.
That's crazy, right?
What are your superpowers?
Superpowers, dude? I don't even know how to pee in this thing.
With that same kind of sharp-witted humor that he had in It, he also brings to this. He's the kid who's really obsessed with superheroes. He's got like a replica of the Batarang. He's got a bullet that hit Superman in his room. He is obsessed with this world. He's the one that kind of nerds out about the rules of the universe and, what kind of superpowers you can have. So whenever Zachary Levi and Shazam come into play and you have this kid with this powers he doesn't know what to do, he kind of becomes like a mentor in a way. Like, hey, let's see if you got super speed. Let's see if you can, if you're bullet retardant. Let's see if you can fly. And it's so much fun seeing that because it's the same kind of dynamic, again, kind of going back to Big, that Josh had in Big with his best friend, where his best friend has kind of encouraged him and given him all these ideas that he can do now. Go buy beer, buy a bunch of pizza, let's eat junk food for 3 days, let's get a hotel room. And it's just that same dynamic that's so much fun to watch.
His name is Captain Sparklefingers.
No, it's not. That's not my name.
And then you have the villain played by Mark Strong. And I have more thoughts on him that I'm going to save for another portion of this review, but I will just say that the portrayal by Mark Strong is kind of a go-to guy for this type of character. He's always played really good villains, and when you get the name Mark Strong, you kind of know what type of villain you're going for, and I really liked more so the storyline of how they kind of mirror image the villain with Billy Batson, because the villain they introduce you to in the beginning of this movie, he's kind of rejected by his family kind of puts him down constantly, and that psychologically fucks him up and sets him on this path to becoming this supervillain so that he can prove himself worthy to this family that's always rejected him. Where on the opposite side of that coin, you have Billy Batson, who was kind of rejected by his family in a way, but he longs for that hole to be filled too, but he fills it with something else. He fills it with hope. He fills it with kind of, the longing for happiness, the longing for resolution, the longing for answers, which makes him become more the hero side of that scenario. Whereas Mark Strong's character just goes full darkness and I'll show you why you should have shown me some love. And I like that dynamic. It didn't hit me right away, but after I saw the movie and kind of thought on it for a minute, I was like, that was a really cool, subtle way that they do that classic villain and hero kind of dynamic where they're like mirror images of each other. Now let's talk about the humor. This might be the funniest comic book movie that I've seen since Iron Man 3. I know some of you don't like Iron Man 3. Maybe that's a bad example. Thor Ragnarok, maybe? I don't know. It's a funny ass movie. That's what I'm trying to get at. All the comedy pretty much lands. There's not really any cringeworthy moments. There's not really any jokes that fall flat. It's not like a joke a minute to where it's just too much. It's actually perfectly placed and perfectly paced with the tone they're going for with this movie. Kind of a more lighthearted, a little bit more family friendly, a little bit more jovial movie than, say, Batman v Superman was, where it was very dark in tone and very kind of heavy. This movie, the humor, well placed, well timed, and well executed. So many of the jokes, there was at least 4 or 5 moments in this movie where a joke landed and my entire theater just erupted in laughter. Like that kind of laughter where you can't even hear the next 30 seconds of dialogue as people are still kind of winding down and catching their breath. It was genuinely funny. And for somebody that's really critical of comedy, especially in some of these superhero movies, as much as I loved Aquaman, that was one of my criticisms for that. Humor in Shazam, A+.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
And even though I've kind of touched on it with describing the characters and some of their motivations, I really enjoyed the overall story that they gave us with Shazam. Just seeing this simple, relatable, everyday, real-life story about a kid looking for his parents because he's been abandoned, kind of rejecting the notion of anybody else being his family. You get this loving foster family with great parents and really nice, interesting little dynamic of different kids who are in the same boat that had the same kind of past as you, and he's kind of just blocking it all out. You don't know me, you're not my family. Seeing that character kind of grow throughout that while stopping this evil, while also learning how to become a superhero and kind of get rid of his selfishness and do things for the greater good of what your potential can be. Kind of like that classic Spider-Man thing about, responsibility. And I just liked how that all played out. I liked how it was a more simple, down-to-earth story, and all the themes, all the really relatable, down-to-earth, grounded stuff that they were going for regarding family and destiny and everything like that, it all played out very well. Now, speaking on the action scenes, there are action scenes in the second and third act of this movie whenever, you know, Shazam has to fight Mark Strong, and you have kind of this, you know, mirror image of two villains who can fly and have very similar powers, and they have to come at odds with each other. And it feels like it was kind of a response to Man of Steel, because Man of Steel was very much the same setup for the same type of showdown. Two supervillain, or a supervillain and a superhero with the same types of powers that can fly around the city and cause gigantic amount of havoc if they wanted to. But in this movie, they kind of tone it down. They have a little bit more fun with it. There's a great scene whenever, you know, Mark Strong is delivering his villain speech. I'm not going to spoil, but it's one of the best scenes of the movie. And then you have like this aspect to Mark Strong's powers where he's embodied by the 7 deadly sins, and the 7 deadly sins embody themselves with these like gargoyle type monsters, which is cool because you don't only have just Mark Strong as like this super powered person, but you also have like these monster henchmen around him, you know, kind of adding to the fight. And it makes for some really fun sequences with how cool and how kind of demonic that they look at the same time, while being very kind of goofy and jovial at the same time, having the classic like Superman and Zod style fight where they're flying around and punching each other, running into buildings and everything like that. I really liked how they kind of kept the action scenes down to earth and grounded with the tone of this movie. It didn't kind of, you know, inflate itself in the third act, but it still was very like grand scale with what the things were going on and kind of overall what was going to be going on between Shazam and all the different powers that this villain played by Mark Strong has. Dr. Sivana, that's his name. I kept saying Mark Strong too much, I had to look it up. Dr. Sivana and Shazam. All the action scenes between them, pretty damn good. And my final positive, I actually like how this movie sets it up to where we can kind of keep Shazam outside of the DC, you know, overall universe whenever they decide to go back to doing those kind of team-up movies 2 years from now, 4 years from now. We can keep Shazam separate from that, and I feel like it'll survive just fine. Like, we can have Shazam and have like little winks and nods like the Batarang to where you know this is the same universe, but it's not one of those like burning questions like, why the fuck isn't Batman showing up? Where's Superman at? It feels like it sets it up very nicely with some things that go down in the third act regarding the fates of certain characters and, you know, expansions of powers and things along that lines, to where you could have a Shazam 2, a Shazam 3, and there's enough potential within this little Shazam franchise that this can feel like its own little mini universe and its own little mini tone that would be perfectly fine and tons of fun as its own separate thing. So I have to commend WB and DC for kind of going in that direction and not making this movie feel like, when is this going to tie back in? You know what I mean? When is it setting this thing up? And when exactly are we going to see Superman come in? Is he going to join the Justice League? Are we going to have, you know, Crisis on Infinite Earths? I never thought about the bigger universe once in this movie, except for the times where they mentioned Superman and Batman, and it felt like more of a wink and a nod than like genuine connective tissue. So I like that they're going in that new approach now and kind of pumping the brakes, catching their breath, and focusing on telling great, singular, isolated stories. Now moving on to some mixed elements, and I'm not going to have a negative section in this review, guys, because the 3 things that I really have that I'm just kind of mixed on, that's really all, and it's not full-blown negatives. That's why it's in the mix. So first and foremost, I talked a little bit about Mark Strong, and I was going to come back to him later on. Although I think his performance is very good, he's definitely Mark Strong being Mark Strong, and I like the storyline dynamic between Shazam and Dr. Sivana. On the surface level, Dr. Sivana is a very stock comic book villain. And I don't think they were trying to go for anything more than that, because what this villain was doing was setting up the story and building up our hero, and that's exactly what they should have done. But he's not exactly going to make like my top 3, top 4, maybe even top 5 of DC villains that we've seen so far. And we've seen some rough ones. So Dr. Sivana, just kind of a regular old comic book villain. And it's the villain you expect Mark Strong to play. Like, you know, it's not a whole lot different than the villain that he played in Kick-Ass, or the villain that he eventually would have played in Green Lantern, just with a little bit more powers, I guess. So that's an element that's a little bit mixed on. He suits the story well, suits the hero well, but not a memorable villain on his own. I wouldn't be able to see a Dr. Sivana movie.
Oh, you're like a bad guy, right?
You literally did the opposite of what a superhero is supposed to do.
Second mixed element that I have is that this movie does swing quite a huge way into the more lighthearted, jovial, kid-friendly tone than the previous DC movies. Now, it fits the character of Shazam and that storyline very well. That's why it still ends up being a very enjoyable movie, but I kind of said this a bit in Aquaman. Like if you're somebody that loves the DC universe so far, like you love Man of Steel, you loved Wonder Woman, you liked Batman v Superman, a lot of those more like heavy, dark elements that they bring into that, it's a pretty big pendulum swing to come over to the tone of Shazam. A lot of people are still gonna like it. You know, you can like the tone that they went for in the beginning, and you could still enjoy this tone. I'm one of those people, but if you're somebody that really appreciated what DC was doing and kind of standing out from the pack and being a little bit more dark and gritty and a little heavy, Shazam is going to feel like too much of a shift for you, I think. So just kind of keep that in mind, what kind of movie fan you are, what kind of comic book fan you are. If the trailers looked way too hokey and lighthearted for you, the movie is no different than the trailer. The trailer gave us you everything that this movie is going to be. Still have a little bit of worry, and I had the same worry at the end of Aquaman, that despite really enjoying Aquaman, despite really enjoying Shazam, I am a little bit nervous that they're going to swing so far to this tone that they're going to stay here. And I don't necessarily want all DC movies to feel like Shazam. I don't want all DC movies to feel like Aquaman. That's one of the things that I actually think DC has going for it. For better or worse, a lot of these movies feel so different. Like one of my biggest criticisms for the MCU, as much as I love the MCU, is that it's starting to feel very formulaic. It has been for the past couple of years, to where an MCU movie feels like an MCU movie. They have very similar templates. They have very similar kind of formulas for action and humor and darkness and stuff like that. Whereas DC, you got things like Man of Steel, very grounded. You have Batman v Superman, that's very, you know, very dark and heavy. You got Wonder Woman, very inspiring. You got Aquaman, that's kind of like the party guy and very fun and jovial and kind of has a mix of those tones. Then you have Shazam, which is very lighthearted. So as long as they keep that dynamic of having very different tones, very different styles, very different approaches to fit these different characters, I think that's going to be awesome. But I hope they don't learn the wrong lessons from the success that Aquaman had and from the success that Shazam is definitely going to have, and they say, oh, people like this more, let's stay in this tone, because then you're going to run into the same problem. Everything doesn't need to feel like Shazam. So not really a negative on the movie, just a worry that I have as a DCU fan. So overall, guys, Shazam is a breath of fresh air within the comic book movie genre. It's a breath of fresh air within the DC universe so far. It's a very fun, enjoyable blast of a movie that you can take the whole family to, and kids especially are really going to enjoy it. My son loved the hell out of it. A great character in Billy Batson and in Shazam, great actors portraying them. I love all the family dynamics and the kind of the messages and the lessons learned along the way. All that stuff. Very high praise for Shazam. If you like the trailer, if you like this character, if you like this universe, absolutely go out and check it out.
Dude, did you see that?
Yeah, you electrocuted a bus and almost killed these people.
And then I caught it!
So if you're a fan of comic book films, if you're a fan of the DC Universe, the Shazam comics, any of the above, or you just want a fun movie to take your family to, look no further than Shazam, because it delivers everything that you would want from this style of movie. Go check it out in theaters, and then as soon as this thing drops, go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of Shazam? Did this deliver for you? Is this too far of a pendulum swing as far as tone for you? Did you enjoy Zachary Levi? Did you like Mark Strong as the villain? Was he a little bit too stock for you? Do you want to see more Shazam movies? Do you think Shazam will work well within the overall universe, or should he stay by himself? Put all of your thoughts on Shazam and the DC universe down in the comment section below, guys, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out some social media links, check down below for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spreadshirt for Cody Leach t-shirts and other merchandise designed by the great Woody Bowen, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel, help this channel grow, and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. So check all that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, including the rest of my DC movies, my MCU movies, all that good shit, check all those reviews and stuff out by clicking right over here.